Thank you, thank you. Can you all hear me? Can everyone hear me? Yep, hear me at the back? Awesome, thank you. Yes, that was a good intro, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Corey. I'm a graphic designer and a brand strategist. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've worked for a lot of studios across Australia, big ones, small ones. I currently run my own design studio from Geelong called Elk Creative. A couple of awesome other Geelong people here called from Pixel Digital, Nick and Nathan. Go give them a chat afterwards. My business is focused on branding for property development, and I'm going to sort of talk about how I found that focus if I've got some time. The business is Elk Creative. So the talk is on positioning and positioning for profit. So I'm going to have to talk about what is positioning. That's the best place to start. So positioning is pretty broad. It's a broad topic. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So this is positioning, this is positioning, this is positioning. So all those examples are in a physical space, and we'll relate this back to services, and that's okay. But in a physical space, what we find is that the products, what they're placed next to, how they're placed, how they're presented, actually give us visual cues and tell us something about the value behind that product. So oversimplifying things a little bit, but you go into a supermarket and the cheap stuff's down here and the mainstream stuff is here, and the really expensive stuff with alcohol, top shelf, it's literally on the top shelf. Now I've just broken that down into 3 basic segments, but obviously it's more complicated than just cheap, middle of the range and expensive. With something like wine, you're going to see that broken up into various segments within those. So you might have something that's traditional or something that's modern or something that's, I don't know, for younger people or older people. So there's finding different segments within that, that market. So I've got this example again. This is products again. And you can see here, how do we define positioning? Or in a situation like this, we actually have nothing to show us here that what separates these products from one another. So what things could we use to actually define what value is behind one of these products? Why would we pick one of these over another? Well, we've got nothing to indicate ourselves here. So imagine you've sent your intern out and you've given them $50 to buy a bottle of wine for a client, and they know nothing about wine. So what would they use to help them, get an idea of value? Has anyone got an idea of something they might use? Size of the bottle? Weight? Yep. Gold stars? Yep. What's that?
The meal it's going with.
The meal it's going with, that's a good one. Yeah. So I've sent an intern out, little Johnny, and he doesn't know anything about that. So, but that is definitely, that's how someone that's probably knows what they're buying would probably definitely look at it. But I've broken this down into 3 segments. So you've got tactile things, and they're all the things about the bottle itself. So, what does the bottle feel like? What's the shape of the bottle? What's the type of glass? What is the quality of this? That just being able to see and hold that product will tell us if it's a cheap product, if it's an expensive product, if it's for us essentially. We've got these, and if you relate this back to a service, this is going to be the things like the way that you talk to clients, the things that are your touch points with clients, so the way that you interact with them, your customer service, and things like that. The intangible stuff. So that's like, brand recognition. Have you seen that brand before? What are the things on there? So someone said medals, and so that's very much like social proof. So that would be like customer reviews and stuff for your services. These things give us an idea of what these products, the value behind these products would be. Price, I put price by itself because that's such a key indicator. If we actually just look at those first things, the tactile and intangible, it's a little bit hard here because you can't hold those things. But this would give you an idea of what product is more suited to you. So Johnny's got $50, he's going to go out and buy this bottle of wine. So if we looked at price, you can see here that if we remove the labels, the price alone is going to give us a clear idea of what the value behind that product is worth. If we take away the price, what bottle of wine do you want? Well, you don't know, but now you've got a pretty good idea that you would rather have the $200 bottle of wine than the $3 bottle of wine. And with our $50 budget, it's likely that we're going to come back with the $40 bottle of wine. So this is them combined together. So, and these give us, like I said, clues and indicators to what that, the value behind the product itself. So positioning promotes the right product to the right people so that all other options become invisible. So just like with the wine on the shelf, we're breaking down these segments. So we're not competing against the $200 bottle of wine, and we're not competing against the $300 bottle of wine. We're in that $40 to $50 bracket. And so how do we make that stand out? If we're doing that right, then we can, you know, we're not competing with the upper and the lower, we're just competing within our own space, and we are the one that becomes really prominent. If you go to a bottle shop and you're looking at wine, I know I keep talking about wine, people probably had a few drinks last night, so sorry about that. But it's likely that you're not going to pick up every single bottle in that range. So maybe you pick up, you know, one or two. So what are those things that are making you pick up those couple? So why do we do this? Why do we actually want, I need a drink, but why do we want to position ourselves? And it's to get better clients. But what are better clients, you know? And who wants better clients? Like, I want better clients, you want better clients, we all want better clients. But what actually defines a better client? Well, there's different things that we'll all want. So some of us are going to, I guess, focus on things like, you know, do we want more money? Do we want to work with bigger brands? Do we want to work with better brands? Is there social good? Do we want to feel good about the work that we do? Do we want to work with a charity? Do we want awards? Do we want accolades? I haven't put it on there, but do we want to work with people that value our work and that, you know, really appreciate the work that we do? Do we just want to work with the Hemsworths? You know, all of these things are okay. There's no right or wrong. And some people are going to be motivated by different things in different orders and to different amounts. So this is really a recipe. Most people aren't going to just be motivated by money and just go after a client that makes them unhappy. They're not just going to chase a big brand. They're going to work out the things that are right for them. And the good thing is that we're all different, that we've all got different skills. We've all got different things that we can show, we've got different processes, but all of our prospects and all of our clients aren't looking for the exact same thing. So here's an example where we're taking positioning, and if you look at something like Apple versus JB Hifi, I really like this one because if you take an Apple store, I'm not talking about Apple the brand, but when I talk to people doing brand strategy, they often position themselves or think that they want to be and aspire to be like Apple. But when you start to break it down, that's not actually what their business looks like. Now, yes, we'd all want to be like Apple, but if we were the owner of something like JB Hifi, it's likely we'd be pretty happy with that business. And the ironic thing is that if you look at Apple and JB Hifi, there's probably not much difference between the price of what you would pay for a MacBook. If anything, there's probably very little difference between what you pay for their products. So why does JB Hifi have their signage done with texters? You know, why do they look cheap and crappy? You know, are they cheap and crappy? Can't they afford to actually do proper signage? It's actually because they're trying to look like a discount warehouse store, and they're doing that to attract that sort of person. Now, with this example, Apple and JB Hifi isn't competing against Apple. What they're competing against are probably things like Officeworks or even things like Dick Smith, and Dick Smith went out of business. And so JB Hifi is actually making those brands less visible. So they're not competing with everyone, and when they are competing in a space, they're trying to, you know, be the one that you go to for that type of product. So I'm sure we've all been here. If you do a little bit of digital strategy, or you've done project outlines with clients, then you come to that situation. Let's say you're working with a customer and they sell shoes, and you say, well, what is your point of difference? What is your unique selling proposition? And they're like, it's, you know, good. They're good quality. You're like, okay, that's helpful. What's your price point? Are you cheap or expensive? Oh no, we're good value for money. Yeah, good value for money. That's nice and vague. Thank you very much. And who is going to buy your product? Like, what's the ideal customer for you? And they're like, oh, everyone that has feet. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, seriously. But if we're honest with ourselves, that's what we do as designers and developers. We say, who do we work for? We work for small businesses. And that's not really much of a niche at all. It is actually trying to say that what we do is that we work for everything, for everyone. So, to position something, you actually need to know where it belongs. You can't actually place it in the market without actually knowing who you're placing it for and why you're placing it there. This is one that people's eyes will roll. A lot of people don't like this word, and that's okay. Niching, not niching. We can have a fight about it later. A lot of people have problems with niching, and we're going to talk about ways of positioning without niching, but also like what actually is niching, how do you niche, and what are some of the myths and some of the benefits around niching. So what is a niche? It's actually finding a small piece of a large market. So this is not a small piece of a large market. This is very broad. This is what a lot of people probably see that they do, that they're a web designer for small to medium businesses. Well, that's great. But if you're niching successfully or your focus is successful in a room this size, ideally you're the only one, or you're one of two or three. If everyone in the room offers the same thing to the same people, that's a pretty broad market. We're actually all then competing with each other, which we're not. So what are the common ways that we see niching? So what the main things you see with niching are two types of niching. I'm going to break that down a little bit more, but it's generally looked at like there's a horizontal niche, which is niching by a service or a skill. So an example of that would be, again, WordPress developer or designer is too broad, but something like a custom plugin developer starts to get a little bit more niched, or a designer that's a hand letterer rather than just a broad general designer. A vertical niche is a niche by an industry type. So too broad would be saying that you work for the health sector. A defined niche would be saying that you work with optometrists. Now some people would be like, I don't want to be that specific. So how else can we niche? Most of the time what we will do is we'll pick and choose a few of those things and actually create like a diagonal and not actually be horizontal and vertical. So rather than being just SEO, which is very broad, or working for healthcare, which is very broad, you could do SEO for healthcare or for hospitality. And that's a good way to, I guess, find a niche without committing to something that is, I guess, going to scare you. A lot of people have problems with some of these things around niching, and that's what we're going to have a quick chat about now. So what are some of the myths around niching? Does anyone here actually work with a niche? Have a set niche? I should have asked that at the start. So I've got like 3-4 hands. That's great. So I'll probably be preaching to the converted with this one, and that's okay. But what are some of the myths around niching? Does anyone have any problems or things that they fear about niching? All right, well, some of the common ones that you hear is that you're actually going to tighten or limit the amount of people that you can work with. So that's the big one, that you're reducing your options. But the fact of the matter is if there's 1,000 businesses in your area and there's 100 people doing what you do, then that's, I don't know, what's that, 10 businesses to each person? You're probably going to find it hard to stay in business, but that's just an example. Now, if you are focusing on a niche, there's 50 doctors in your area, and only 2 people service that, well, now you've got a 25 client, so you've got more chance to getting a client because you're actually focused on that area. Another myth that people worry about with niching is that they're going to get bored, right? They're going to be doing the same thing day in, day out. Blair Enns has a really good analogy for the myth of niching, which is that people in our industry often see that we are in a room full of doors, and each door is an option. And we think, great, that's a different sort of budget over here, that's a different sort of budget over there, it's a different type of client, that's a different type of project. We want the options, we want to be doing different types of stuff. And we all fear that when we walk through, when we pick a niche, what we're doing is we're picking a door, we're opening it up and walking through, and then we're closing the door behind us and we're in an empty room, and that's it. But what we find when we go into that room is that it's a room full of other doors with just as many options. So let's say you're doing SEO for hospitality, for example. Now, if you're working broadly in SEO, maybe you're working on things like doing backlinks all the time. But if you become an authority in that area, you can start doing consulting and broader range of topics. So you actually have more to do than just a single service all the time. So that's one of the big myths of niching. Some of the benefits of niching, well, the opposite of what we said. It actually gives you more focus, it gives you more chance to be found, and it gives you a chance to price higher for your services. Because you are an authority in that area, or then there's less people competing in that space, you can put your prices up and work with people who are willing to pay you more. So ideal clients. This is a form of niche. I would put this alongside a vertical niche because you can do the same things with an ideal client where you can combine it with a service type to really tighten that up. Ideal clients differ from picking an industry type because you can have a type of person that is in a different industry. So it's not just working with, optometrists. You might work with, female entrepreneurs, and they're in various different businesses. So what should you do to find your ideal client? Now it's going to depend on where you are in the stage of your business. If you're really stuck and you're really at the start and you're freelancing or you haven't had a lot of clients, a really simple thing to do is to focus on yourself and create a list, simple as that, 3 columns, and look at the things that you enjoy doing, the things that you're great at doing, and the things that people want that you can do. And you can see here that it's pretty simple, that if you are doing things that people don't need, you're not going to get many clients, there's no money there. If you're doing things for clients that if you're doing things that you don't enjoy, it's not going to be fun at all. And if you're doing things that you're not great at, no one's going to hire you. So create a list, and in those lists, you can write out the things that you enjoy doing, and they might be, they don't have to be work-related. Maybe you enjoy walking, or surfing, or whatever it is. Cooking. You can find things that you enjoy doing that are work-related. Maybe you enjoy coding, or maybe you enjoy, designing or drawing, whatever it is. But then what are the things that you're actually good at? Maybe you enjoy surfing, but you're not actually good at it. Maybe you enjoy drawing, but you're not any good at it. And what things do people need? So if you put those things together, what you're trying to find is a pattern there, and a pattern for something that someone will want. So that might be, maybe you're great at drawing, you're great at drawing patterns, so you could be a textile designer for the surf industry. You like surfing, those things all fit together. Now, if you are at an agency level or you've been working in the industry for a while, you can do the same sort of thing, but rather than focusing on yourself, you just focus on the clients that you've had in the past. You can see it's exactly the same problems, that if you're working with people that don't pay you well, you're not going to have money. So you can see the problems are the same, but the way you work out this list is a little bit different. So what you're doing is trying to find a correlation with the clients you've worked in the past, what clients that you've worked with that you love, the clients that you've really helped, that have talked about you and are really grateful for the work you do, and the clients that pay you well. And you can find some sort of correlation between them. It might be that it's not always the same industry. It might be that there's always a type of business that is at a level where there's a marketing or communications person that's reaching out to you, and that's the type of person. So you can find that that's the common thread, or often a common thread, and you start to focus on that type of person. So the next level of doing what you can do with that is create a user profile. And what we do with a user profile is try and give a face to the name. That's it, I'm done, thank you. We're trying to actually understand who the customer is, right? And we're trying to give them, put an actual face to the name and really define who they are. It's all right. That was me at like 7:30 this morning. And I said the same thing, it won't stop. So it's a really good exercise to do for yourself. Some people have probably done this already. If you haven't, or some people might do this for clients, but it's a great exercise to do for yourself. Now you can see here I talked about a marketing coordinator. So this is Tiffany, she's a marketing coordinator, and that's the sort of person. This isn't actually the niche that we work with, this is just an example. But this shows the type of person. The reason why we do this, the way that you would do this is actually just list these things. Find a photo, what does that person look like? Give them a name, work out what their role is, what do they look like, what things do they say? So you can see that there's a quote here, that sort of defines the language, the way that they talk. What are their characteristics, what are their archetypes, how do they think, how do they feel, how do they like to communicate, what things do they want from you, what are they looking for, what problems have they had? Now why this is really powerful is that it starts to give you an idea of who you're talking to. And you can see here, I've got a link there. You can create these yourself, or there's plenty of resources online. I've just put an example there that you can go to. They're not designed like this, but they'll allow you to go through this process to create this sort of thing for yourself. If you want to take that a step further, or that's a little bit too scary for you and you think that your customer isn't a single person, right? That your customer is sometimes a 50-year-old man and sometimes it's a 20-year-old female. You can use an empathy map to make that broader. This is a thing that's often used with UX UX design and customer satisfaction sort of customer journey stuff. You can also use that to extend the user profile to actually find out a little bit more about that person. So we've got these things here. What do they think? So they're essentially what keeps that person up at night. What are they worrying about? What are the things that are their problems? And what do they hear? So when I say what do they hear, it's what things do they notice when people are talking? And who do they listen to? That's really important. They're listening to their peers, are they listening to professionals? Are they listening to their family? Are they listening to friends? What do they see? That's similar. It's like what things do they notice in the world that are problems? What do they say? So how does that sound? What things are they actually complaining about? What are they frustrated about? What are they passionate about? What's the actual language that they have? And more importantly, what do they do? So when they're looking for action or they're trying to implement something, how do they behave? So back to positioning. How do we present and what do we say? So forget about what you want, focus on the customer. Now, positioning essentially is trying to speak in a way that the customer is interested in you. And so how do you do that? It's through your communications, it's in your content, it's in the way that you present yourself. And that might sound vague, but you can imagine if you're writing a novel and it's for teenage boys versus 60-year-old women, it gets pretty clear that they would sound different. The language that you would use would be different. The content that you would use would be different. So focus on the actual customer and what they need from you. So this is a formula. This is from Jonathan Stark to creating a killer positioning statement. Now, often, if we don't have a good positioning statement, we'll say something like, we create websites that work, or innovative websites that get results. But what does that mean? I mean, I don't mean to offend anyone if someone's got that on their website. It's understandable that what you're trying to do is find a way to differentiate yourself. But if you look at this formula, it actually works out to be, I am a discipline who helps my ideal client with an expensive problem that they have, and unlike my competitors, I do ... So this is an example. I am a UX designer who helps online fashion retailers with cart abandonment and conversion, unlike my competitors, I use multivariate split testing to uncover solutions quickly. Now, if you are an online fashion retailer and you come across someone's website that says, we create innovative websites that get results, or you come across someone that's saying this to you, it's night and day. This person speaks directly to that person, and if that's the person that you want to work with, and that's what you need to work out, who do we want to work with? But if you are looking to work with online fashion retailers, then this is like a really good way of doing that. I've got a couple of other examples. So I'm a business coach who helps female entrepreneurs with finding investors for their startups. Unlike my competitors, I've helped launch over 100 female-founded businesses. This is me. So I'm a brand strategist who helps land developers to place property buyers into their dream homes. And unlike my competitors, I've been creating brands for 20 years. Now, let's break this down a little bit because it's very hard for people to do this. You're not going to be able to nail this on the first go. It's something that you probably want to sit on and try and work through. But let's look at something like, I've been creating brands for 20 years. Does that make me a unique person? Is that like, someone that's written, if you've written 3 bestseller books, that's going to be, your point of difference. But a lot of us don't have those things. But if in this example here, I've been creating brands for 20 years. So there's other people in this room that have probably done that. There's a lot of people in the industry that are branding and design specialists that can say the same thing. But when we start adding these other bits to them, like they're positioning themselves to work with brand developers, well then there's less of those people that can say those things. They're making the statement that they help property buyers get into their dream homes. Once again, they get smaller. And more importantly, unlike my competitors, not every competitor in the world, so not every single designer out there, it's the 3 or 4 other websites or designers out there that my prospects have contacted. I'm not worried about the designers in other countries that are winning awards. When I say my competitors, I just mean the ones that are likely to work with my customers. So the ones at my price point, the ones that have the same processes, the ones that work the same way with the same sort of personality. So I'm not competing. So even though this, I've been creating brands for 20 years, seems a little bit squishy, it's actually a lot more focused because the competition that I'm working with isn't actually everyone. So positioning is how we present ourselves. It's the language that we use and the stories that we tell. So it's got a lot to do with the content that you have. Now, again, we go back to an ideal client or a niche. If you're going to create content and you're just trying to talk to small business owners, you need to write a lot of blog posts to cover a lot of topics to actually get some cut through. But if you're talking to one specific market or a type of person that has a type of problem and a type of pain point, you can focus on those things. You can create less content or less amounts of content, or you can create content across different channels and platforms and say the same thing and build up something bigger. So this was about more profit. And so how does this actually help you get more profit? Well, the idea is simple, that what we don't want to do is simply attract people because they have more money. What we want to do is attract people that value what we do more than other people. And they are more likely to give us more money for the same work. There's no point doing $10,000 websites and then trying to land $50,000 websites, but they actually take you 10 times as long. Or they need 10 times the amount of resources. So if you can make websites profitable at $5,000 and that's your market, that's okay. You don't need to chase the numbers. But what you want to do is find people that are more likely to pay you more money for the exact same product. You don't want to necessarily have to. And with that, if you want to start charging $10,000 and you're currently charging $5,000, or you want to start charging $50,000 and you're currently charging $10,000, there's going to be more work involved. But some of that work involved isn't actually more, actual development time. It's going to be, ideally, it's in your marketing and the process that you go to land these clients. And that might be 1.5 times more work, or 2 times more work, but that makes a bigger profit margin. So key takeaways. We need to know who we're talking to before anyone will listen to us. The analogy for that is that, you don't go networking, just stand in the middle of the room and talk and talk and hope that someone stops and hears what you're saying. What you do is you pick an individual and you go up to them and talk to them. Then you might pick another individual and talk to them. If you connect with that person, they're more likely to tell other people. But you also, this is another important thing with a niche, you don't actually have to work with one niche. You don't want to work with too many, but you can work with a couple of niches. If you've got a niche that's really locked in, probably only want to work with one. But you could probably get away with working with a couple, 2 or 3, and see how they work, see if they generate interest for you, see if that's a good thing. And that's just creating, you could create landing pages that talk about a specific problem, for example. Our ideal customer is the ones who see the most value in what we do. If someone values what we do, they will pay you more for the same service than someone who does not. I guess I've really just covered that topic. Actually, I've got an example with this. If you take Dunlop Volleys, anyone know Dunlop Volleys, the shoes? You can buy them at Big W, $20, $30. You can actually find them in fashion shops, like fashion retailers online, and they'll sell them for 4, 5 times the amount. For the people getting duped, not really. If they're going into a store, maybe they're getting a better customer experience, but maybe they value the fact that they are buying something that's fashionable and not buying something that's cheap and their only option. Focus on your ideal customer and becoming what they are looking for. Our prospects, I'm nearly done, I'm nearly done. Our prospects are not, the other prospects that we have that are not our ideal customer, the ones that aspire to be like our ideal customer, will still be attracted to us. A really good example for that is something like Harley Davidson. Now that's a brand that is rebellious and it's, associated with bikies and things like that. But they don't have to change who they are to attract a corporate lawyer to want to work with them. It's the corporate lawyer that wants to feel a little bit wild and rebellious or wants something vintage that is attracted to that brand. So you focusing on one thing, you will still attract people outside of your niche or your ideal client. And some of those people are seeing the same values in what you present to the world. And I think that's it.